Welcome into a special new coach edition of the HawgBeat Half Hour presented by our friends at BetSaracen. I'm Kyle Sutherland alongside Daniel Fair and our special guest, Brey Cook. Brey, you've been, you have some tweets take off quite a bit, but I think the Ryan Silverfield one might end up making you a little bit of money. Of course, say that a little tongue in cheek, but man, it's great to have you on. Obviously, former Razorback, and you coached on the same staff at Memphis for a couple of years. You were a GA there when Ryan Silverfield, before he had taken over as head coach. So really appreciate you taking some time out and really kind of break this down a little bit with us from both a Razorback and Memphis Tiger standpoint.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here with y'all guys.
Absolutely. Well, before we do get started on that, I want to tell everybody first and foremost about our friends over at Razorbacks. There is only one way to describe Razorbacks: the best fit, best feel. And Razorbacks has released so many items within their new licensed game day collection, from everyday shorts to their Delta performance pants. You can use code HAW20 on Razorbacks.com for a generous 20% off all new orders. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with code HAW20. Well, Brey, we'll go back to, as we record here on Sunday afternoon, we'll go back to Sunday morning a little bit. I think just about everybody knew that it was not only going to be a crazy day for Arkansas, but the SEC in general. It's been maybe the craziest day in SEC history from a coaching carousel standpoint. But around 9-ish this morning is when the report started coming out that Ryan Silverfield was going to be named head coach. He was a candidate, I guess you could say. I mean, he was definitely in the conversation being talked about, but really the traction had picked up towards Alex Golesh and then a little bit of Kane Womack as well. So when the news came out on Sunday morning, what was your immediate reaction?
Man, I'm in New York, so I was we good? Is he?
Yeah, he's good. I think he's just stepped away from. Oh, there he goes.
Good. Perfect. So I'm in New York right now, and I slept in this morning, and I woke up to the notification on my phone that he was hired, and I didn't believe it. I set up, and I immediately texted him, said it was real, so here we go. And I'm excited. I think a lot of the people on Twitter might not be, which has been a wild day to follow. You mentioned that tweet kind of taking off a little bit. For me, when this job first came open, when we fired Sam, my mind went, man, how do we be successful in the SEC in today's college football landscape? And for me, and I think for any program, you have to have the money. You have to have the finances behind your NIL. You have to be able to compete with these ridiculous NIL amounts of money that are being spent on these kids, and the way that it's lawless right now. But you gotta have the money behind you to go out there and get these kids on campus. And so for us to compete, we got to be able to do that. And my experience with Ryan was one of the things that he did an incredible job of at Memphis as an assistant coach, as an assistant head coach, and then as the head coach, was raising money with his boosters within the Memphis community to completely revamp their football facilities, their Liberty Bowl, their game day locker rooms. They have some of the nicest facilities over there at Memphis, because he was able to raise that money. And for me, he's the perfect fit here at Arkansas, is because the money's there. It just feels like the money's been a little bit dormant. And with this announcement of this hire, I think the money has gotten involved, as the money's behind him. And that's only going to continue to build, which will give us a chance to compete in the SEC.
You're muted, Kyle.
Got you muted.
Man, I swear every time I'm in the background doing these podcasts, mostly during basketball, but I'm good for one mute for show. But I wanted to go back to the money here for just a second, because that was one thing, and I put out a tweet about this, is the first thing that really stuck out to me when I pulled up the press release and I went to Hunter Yurachek's quote when he talked about having the funding. I'm paraphrasing, right, because I don't have it right in front of me. When he talked about having the funding, he went on record back in September and said that they can't compete. Then then I guess that was at the beginning of September. Then when Sam Pittman got fired at the end of the month, of course, came into the press conference with Bobby Petrino and essentially reiterated the same thing, talking about how they were at the bottom of the conference. So I know you obviously can't speak for the university, can't speak for Ryan Silverfield, but what are maybe some things that you just kind of off the top of your head could think of, or really just maybe some things that you saw from him at Memphis that, again, he could take here. And like I said, I know you can't speak for him, but just maybe some ideas off the bat.
Yeah. It's important. I'm not speaking for Ryan Silverfield here. But the things that I saw at Memphis, and I dropped the line often that, I was raised in Arkansas, but I grew up in Memphis, and I grew up working for Ryan for Norvell. And one of the things that you realize is that the amount of attention to detail in everything that Ryan does is at a different level. And I had coached and I had been a GA and I'd done a lot of things, been around some big programs, but it was just different. And there was absolutely no detail that was too small to be corrected. And we're not overlooking anything. And that was the point where I realized, okay, this guy does things a little differently. And as a GA, it sucks. As one of those things that every single mistake that I made as a graduate assistant was being corrected. And at the time was frustrating, but at the time you also knew that, he's right. I do need to be tighter on what I'm doing. And now where I am now, where I've been a head coach before and I've done some of these things, I realize, man, he really does get it. And he is going to hold his team accountable, his coaches accountable. And that's what I like about what Ryan is. You're getting both sides of it. You've got your personality coaches that are going to make you want to run through a brick wall. And you've got your Nick Saban types who are going to bring in that intense culture and that accountability. And Ryan's going to do both of those things. And that's where you'll see the accountability top to bottom and everything he does. But you're also going to get that relationship that he's proven he can build with his players, with boosters. He's done it at Memphis. And so when you come here and you build those relationships with high school head coaches, with your in-state recruits, and with all the money that is in Arkansas, man, there's really a lot here that can make this thing blow through the roof here in the SEC if we have a coach who can bring it all together.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the culture aspect of it. You worked under him. You talked about his attention to detail, his personality, and all that stuff. I feel like Arkansas's culture just in the last 5 years has been very erratic. And it might be a good word for it, or just kind of topsy-turvy, whether it's, we've got a couple of years ago, we're dealing with Polar Express in the locker room at halftime, or, the offensive coordinator sending emails, directly after a game. It just feels like Arkansas doesn't really have a whole lot of normalcy, if that makes sense. Even like 2 weeks ago, we find out that the interim defensive coordinator like slapped a player, right? Like, it feels like there hasn't very weird story there at the very end of the season. It just feels like that, but it feels like there hasn't really been just a solid culture at Arkansas in a long time. And so I want to get your perspective on what he can do to kind of lay that cultural foundation, just to maybe give some more stability.
Yeah. You think about his culture and it all stems from the head coach, and there's not a right or wrong culture. There's good culture fits at good schools, at different schools. And I guess there is wrong cultures. Don't misquote me there. But what his culture is a very chip on your shoulder. You're going to be the underdog. You're going to go out there. The Memphis versus Arkansas game. I mean, that is a perfect example of his culture. A situation where we're not afraid of a much bigger program coming into our house, and we're going to go out there and play hard, play tough, do things right, and be scrappy enough to get a win versus a much bigger and I can say more talented program, but what should be more talented program, and that's who he is. I think you bring that to Arkansas, it's a perfect fit. Right. For us to say, and I think we had Mitch Mustang on our podcast a couple weeks ago who says this, that, to say you're going to go toe to toe with Georgia, with Alabama, and go out there and do these things that these established SEC schools are doing, like, we're not going to do that right now. And for us to come out there and be successful, you've got to have that underdog. You've got to have that chip on your shoulder. You've got to go out there and play above your level to go toe-to-toe with these schools that do have the established depth of 5-star athletes at every position and that established culture. And I think he's a good fit at Arkansas. You look at Twitter today, everyone's angry, right? That's kind of who Arkansas is. We're feisty, and we're gonna get after you a little bit. And for Ryan to come in here and have that chip on his shoulder and put together a program that is tough, that is scrappy, that is going to go out there and make beat the teams that the national media says we shouldn't. I think that's kind of the identity that he can bring to our program.
Brey, I want to go back to what you talked about a second ago. I think you said high school relationships with high school coaches, because that's been a big topic really in the last few years. And as a former prep writer myself, I talked to a lot of, and I'll say some names on the record because I wrote about him on the record, like Michael Williams from Pond, no longer at Pond Bluff, was the previous head coach there. Whenever Kenny Guyton was there and he was recruiting Courtney Crutchfield, Austin Dendy, these guys, there were coaches. Sam Pittman was coming through Pine Bluff. Really, once he left, once Guyton left, went to Wisconsin, Ronnie Fouch comes in. Hardly heard from him. I don't know, at the time that I had interviewed him, Ronnie had not reached out to him at all, wide receivers coach. But then you talk to Van Pascal up at Cross County that coaches Danny Bill, making a big decision on Wednesday. He was always, Sam Pittman or Deke Adams was always in contact with them. So it kind of just depends on what high school coach that you talk to. But it really seemed to me that there was some dysfunction between that Razorback staff. Actually, it doesn't seem to me there was some dysfunction between the previous staff and some high school coaches. So talk about I know that Coach Silverfield obviously recruited the state pretty hard during his time at Memphis. So just what you saw from his recruiting tactics.
Yeah, he's one of those and it goes back to that attention to detail. And as a GA from him, you'd get the write-ups of every single recruit at every single school that he was responsible for, at 11:30 at night, and it's my job to go through there and make sure that information is presented to the head coach in the right way. And it's one of those things that is exhausting, the way that he will, comb through his recruiting areas, and that's what I'm excited about on that end of things is where that attention to detail comes into play, and that's where it meshes really well with the relationship building. And for him to have already established a recruiting trail here in Arkansas is huge, and that'll only continue to grow. And I think that what he's going to be able to do recruiting, he understands the importance of recruiting the state of Arkansas, and not to say that other coaches don't, but I think that's going to be a priority moving forward. I know that's something he's already been looking at pretty hard.
Also, too, I wanted to go in a little bit just about he has a long history of coaching for a 45-year-old. I think he said 18 years old, like literally started like in high school or fresh out of high school. And I think one of the things that I do really like, now on top of that, I love the fact that he's an offensive line coach, because look, I'm a firm believer that it all starts in the trenches. I think that, we've seen many cases of that, but also just the fact that he's been at the high school level. He's been at the college level. He's been at the NFL level. Under, of course, was at, we know, with the Detroit Lions in 2015, and previously under both Brad Childress and Leslie Frazier with the Minnesota Vikings. So, that's obviously really big right there, is having that understanding really what it takes, obviously, recruiting at the high school level, and then knowing what it takes at the college level, but then having that NFL experience too.
Yeah. And starting with the NFL experience, that is something I think that's really intangible. A lot of coaches will coach in high school for most of their career and then make the jump to college, or spend a majority of their career in college and then get to the NFL. For him to have that experience early in the NFL, I think, especially at Memphis while I was there, was huge. As you're a GA, you have this, part of your responsibilities is making teaching tape. Here's how we do this drill. Here's where it's successful in games, and you do that for all your techniques as an offensive lineman, all of your responsibilities on each play. So you get all thousands of tapes. Well, with Ryan, you're able to go back through, and I had this incredible volume of NFL footage of them doing, here's this drill in the off season, how they worked on it. Here's where it grew into what they did in spring ball. Here's where that drill really became effective in fall camp. And then here's us scoring a huge touchdown with that exact same technique that you worked in the fall, except I was able to use the exact same film from the Vikings, from Detroit, from these places in the NFL, where a high school student comes in there or a high school coach comes in and looks at this, and you see this established, this works, here's why it works, and it works at every level. And so for the NFL experience coming in is a game changer, I think, in my opinion. And then, of course, having the understanding of the high school grind and everything that goes into coaching high school ball really adds a layer of respect that he'll bring to the table when it comes down to recruiting, because sometimes there's that disconnect, right? When you've worked in the SEC or the NFL for so long, you forget the grind that it is to teach 7 classes a day and then go out and coach football for, a 4A football team. And I think that he really has a grasp on that as well. So.
And also wanted to ask too, just talk, because you had experience at of course, as we talked about, as a GA in college, then you were a head coach at Pea Ridge. And you talk about coaching at a program that's in an expanding area, not just Pea Ridge growing, but all those areas around there. So there's always been pressure on coaches. Now I know that it's really the social media age has really made that team. Even when I was in high school, you're a few years younger than me, but when I was in high school, it was just really Facebook, didn't really have Twitter, didn't have Instagram. So you saw some coach rumblings or things like that here and there. But as you said, look, the social, now I know that there was a protest on campus today that like 10 people showed up at. So I think, that just kind of shows you the difference, but not to hate on those people, but I think that just kind of shows you the difference in social media and reality. Anybody that's got a keyboard at their fingertips can say whatever they want, but that's the thing too, this is very difficult in a way. Now I know that he's got a lot of supporters. It's not just what you see on social media, but just from your experience during your coaching career, that's something else to navigate too. Cause you talked about as like a high school coach teaching all these classes, then having to go and practice, but also too, like and I read this about another coach that had pointed out about when he was talking about his wife the other day, like you're basically marrying into being bashed. Our kids hope, hate for this to happen, but sometimes our kids might get bashed. I mean, you're kind of subjecting your, bad looks at the grocery store and things like that. So it's obviously that part of it is tough, but it's just part of what comes with the gig. So, how do you, just from your experiences, how do coaches navigate that these days?
I think there's a real, I don't want to say disconnect, but the last tweet that I heard that hurt my feelings was like in 7th grade. I mean, once you played for the Razorbacks, you kind of realize, okay, these are just tweets from some guy. Like who cares? And I think obviously, you're the head coach of an SEC program, and Twitter is firing off about how they're not super pumped. It doesn't carry as much weight as you might think, and that's my opinion. And maybe I'm different, but you go from, when I was playing, we're getting tweets about how Brandon's car was lit on fire and how he deserved it. And then I think last week I saw a highlight of Brandon to like some like romantic music about how he missed the good old days. And it's just tweets and people getting upset. And it's been tough to be a Razorback fan recently, just because of all the things going on, and we aren't winning like we think we should. And so I get people are fired up and they have a reason to be fired up. But with Ryan coming in, I think, and again, I've done a couple interviews today, and I've told everybody, don't take my word for it. Like, it's not, I don't want to sit here and try and say, hey, he's the greatest thing in the world. I want you to sit back and watch, and I want you to sit back and be a part of what I believe is a different kind of coaching style that I'm excited to see, because you'll notice some attention to detail that you haven't seen before. You'll notice some relationship building, some recruiting that maybe you hadn't seen before, and what you are going to see is money that we hadn't seen before. And so to me, it's like, I love the Razorback, and I'm gonna die for the Hog. So whoever's in that seat, obviously I want Ryan to be successful, but whoever is in that seat, I want to see these athletes have success. I want to see them win. Like, me to go out there and bash the future of the program because I'm upset about something, like, does that make us a better football team? And The answer is no, it doesn't. And if anything, it hurts us. But to your point or to your question, it's just tweets. I mean, as long as the money says, here's your money, go get some players, great. If I get a tweet saying I'm an idiot, then I still got the money and I'm going to get the player anyway. So.
Yeah, I'll comment on that protest at the Jones Center this morning. First of all, there was an abnormal amount of people who thought that the protest was at the Jones Center in Springdale for the
I
ice
saw
skating
that.
race. There were several other beat writers, and one of them was like, "All right, guys, I'm on my way to Springdale." We were like, "That's not the right Jones Center."
No,
There
not
was
it.
I got there about 5 to 10 minutes before it started, just because I wanted to see what it was, right? Like I don't know, I was already here. I had nothing going on a Sunday morning other than writing about the new coach. But I went there and I talked to several of the protesters. There's probably between 20 and 30 at its peak when I was there, and the overwhelming sentiment that I got talking to people, it wasn't that they were protesting Ryan Silverfield. They were upset about just the overall kind of direction of the athletic department. There were a lot of fire Yurachek signs. There was a lot of foul language words that I won't repeat here like about Hunter Yurachek. And we talked to one guy who had a paper bag on his face, and he wanted to only be referred to as the bag man. And I told him this kid was probably like 20 years old, and I said the bag man like 20 years ago meant something completely different than it does today. But because bag man was the guy that dropped the bag of cash off to players.
Yeah.
But we're talking to him, and he was like, he dropped a really good line. He was like, he had a sign that said "God Save Arkansas," and we asked him kind of what it meant. He's like, the fans haven't been listened to in a long time, and at this point, it's only God that's going to listen to us, And he's like, we just want to have a program that we feel proud of, and one that we don't have to walk into the final game of the season against Missouri, or I believe if it's LSU moving forward like it was in the past. Like they just don't want to walk it to the end of the season and be staring down the barrel of 2-10 and 0-8 in conference play. And so that's just on that protest. I mean, I just like the overwhelming sentiment wasn't so much we hate Ryan Silverfield. It was we're upset with just the overall direction of the athletic department.
Yeah. And I hear that. And I think that I don't have the answer. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say what really bothers me is when people offer problems without solutions. And so I try not to do that, but I don't have a solution necessarily. But I do know that this divisiveness doesn't make Arkansas better. And so you're fired up. We're going to crash out for a couple days, and then okay, hoorah. Or is this something that lives on? Or is this something that when you really, and again, it goes back to how much weight Twitter has, which some people it's everything, to some people it's nothing at all. But if you're a high school kid who's making a decision on what school to go to, if I look at I just pull up Arkansas right now, what are you going to see? If I'm a 5-star out of Dallas and I'm like, okay, Arkansas is offering me $500,000, and so is LSU. Let me just, what are they going to do? They're going to go look up on social media Arkansas. It's the first thing they're going to do. And what are they going to see? And so to me, that, again, I'm offering you a problem here without a solution. But I know that this is it's an issue, and it's an issue that's not just at Arkansas. And I know we kind of live in our bubble here. I don't know what that kid would see if he searched LSU, or if he searched any of the other schools, but I know it's not great. If I'm him, I look up, oh my gosh, everyone hates Arkansas who says they're Arkansas fans. Like, what is this? And so I just think that causes an issue.
Well, and talking about just the fickleness, I think you maybe kind of like you didn't say that word, but I think that was kind of, in like, we've been talking a little bit about how the fans are this way and one way or the other. And I think that just the fickleness right now is probably at its peak, like you said, Dan, more so because it's angered towards Hunter Yurachek, or it's anger towards the BOT, somebody other than Ryan Silverfield for the most part. I also think that there were a lot of fans who had their sights set on James Franklin or maybe some other, just different name. I think that could be part of it too. But also, he scores one of these in-state flips or signs one of these in-state recruits, one of the big ones that wasn't initially committed. Also scores a huge transfer or two out of the portal here pretty soon. I think that's going to really help throughout the offseason as well. I mean, I've seen a lot of course, the most common thing that I've seen in regards to your tweet today, and then when I quote tweeted you, oh, well, the offensive lineman also vouched for Pittman. That's like the most common thing that I've heard too. Well, in 2021, when they won 9 games, I think that they were pretty high on you guys for that until things kind of started to go down. So it just kind of shows just the fickleness of, and it's not just Arkansas. I'm not hounding just Arkansas. Every fan base is like this. I think society and life is like that. So it's like that's a great point that Daniel made. And I was going to bring that up before we got off, was just about, I think that more people are upset at the bosses of the new boss or the new head hog more so than they are himself. But this will be the last thing for me. Dan, you might have one more too, but I got to ask you just to start off or to finish off something fun here. What was your best memory, whether it was something funny, if you can tell on here, what was your best memory of your time coaching with Ryan Silverfield at Memphis?
Coaching with Ryan Silverfield.
Like I said, it could be something like funny that happened or a motivational deal, just like your top overall moment during your time at Memphis with him.
I'd say outside of being his roommate for 2 months, it was one of the cool things that they did at Memphis. And this goes back to the money raising kind of thing. There's something different that I'd never seen or been a part of. Was once a year, they got all the boosters, and I don't know if they still do this or not, but when I was there this year, they did it. And Ryan was the one who oversaw it because he was the booster club, managed all that. Well, they brought in all the boosters, and we put them on 2 Greyhound buses, and we would drive down to Biloxi, and we spent a weekend in Biloxi with all these the money behind the program, and we as GAs were basically the butlers on that trip, and just got to see some really eye-opening interactions behind what really builds a football program. And so, you're on a bus from Memphis to Biloxi, you're down there, it's golf trips, it's hanging out at a resort and doing this pretty amazing, just giving back to these boosters, a very unique experience. And that was one of those moments for me. I was like, okay, things are done a little differently here. And this is a huge piece of why we're successful. And that was kind of a mental note that I took, which was pretty wild memory.
All right. Well, Dan, unless you got something else, we'll wrap this baby up. But Brey, really appreciate it, man. It's great catch up. We were talking about before we got on the recording. I was saying Brey and I did about a 3-hour-long pod. Last time that we did a podcast together, it was at his house for a high school preseason. I think we went through literally every classification in like 3.5 hours. A lot of fun. So, Brey, always good here. Go ahead.
Real quick, I tell that story all the time because I was blown away at your ability to know everything about every single high school athlete in the state of Arkansas. And I'm sitting there trying to work the cameras and everything and make sure everything's going on. And whenever I tuned into what you were saying, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's really, you do an incredible job. I just wanted to say that. So.
No, I appreciate it, man. No, I got a lot of respect for what you. Let's talk. Actually, before we do get off here, let's plug your, of course, Coaches in the Mouth pod on the Coaches Pod Network. You guys do a phenomenal. That's actually that was right when y'all had started doing that. We did a high school preview, and now you guys have had Ryan Silverfield, which I believe is episode 97. I watched it earlier again. So episode 97, you can catch with Ryan Silverfield. Got tons of other. I know you've done one with Bobby Petrino, Gus Mouth, and y'all have done a ton of huge names. So a lot of great stuff that you do over there at the Coaches in the Mouth pod. And tell us a little bit about Varsity Vibe, a new thing that y'all got started going this year for high school sports.
Yeah, I mean, Varsity Vibe has been a blast to work with. Basically, with the LEARNS Act these days, you can live anywhere you want and go to any school you want. And as a head coach, I'm not going to use the word recruiting as a high school head coach, but it's very important that you market your football program the right way. And one thing I tried to do as a coach was bring in videographers, do the hype videos for the kids, The kids love seeing who doesn't love seeing yourself make a highlight? Who doesn't love your highlight tape, right? And we tried to push a lot of emphasis on the media side of it. The kids loved it. The parents got to be involved, and the community liked it. And so I realized there's really a market there for promoting high school athletes. And so that's what we do at Varsity Vibe. Alyssa Orange does an incredible job, and Bo Mattingly helps run this thing where basically we supplement media for high school athletic programs. So we'll do their graphics, do their hype videos, do their photos, and it really takes a lot off these coaches' plates and allows them to focus back in on coaching. So that's what we've done at Varsity Vibe, and I think we've had a very successful fall, working with a lot of schools here in the state, and now it's basketball season, so only ramping up from here.
I imagine with J.J. Andrews being in Central Arkansas, I'll probably see you down here a little bit. I'll be over at that gym a little bit. So, well, Brey, looking forward to seeing you, man, on Friday. I'll be working from the state championships on Friday at War Memorial Stadium, so I'll definitely run into you there. But man, it's great catching up with you. Really appreciate the time. Wanted to get a little bit of insight from not only someone who has walked the shoes of a coach, but also as a Razorback. But also it's pretty cool to talk to someone who was with Ryan Silverfield, is the 35th head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks. So, Brey, really appreciate the time, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Honored to be here today. Go Hogs.
All right, that'll do it for episode 17. We will catch you here in a couple of days for the preview of the ACC SEC Challenge game against Louisville at Bud Walton Arena. We will catch you next time.